Let's talk about sex. Hey guys, it's Grace, and today I wanted to give you the introductory video to a new series that I'm trying out called Let's Talk About Sex. I've seen a lot of these kind of videos being introduced to YouTube. I know Melanie Murphy has a lot of videos talking about sex. I know recently I think Zoella and Alfie talked about some stuff in their vlog, and I'm sure there are a lot of other YouTubers that talk about it. I know Lacey Green does a lot of sex ed videos, which is great, but if you do have any suggestions of YouTubers that do these kind of videos that have beauty and lifestyle channels or like vlogging channels or that kind of stuff, definitely comment them down below, because I just think this is something that's not talked about a lot. And it's definitely very significant in our culture and useful, especially if you're a younger person, to learn about it. And I think it's something that needs to be talked about, and we need to be more comfortable talking about with people. So I'm going to have different little segments, different themes for my videos. If you have any suggestions, again, please comment down below. But today's video is going to be about consent. The first thing I want to talk about is, what is consent? So for me, consent is when two people, partners, people who don't really know each other that well, whether it's a one-night stand or you're in a lasting relationship, two people consenting, basically, both of them want to do something. And this goes for, you know, whether it's sex you're consenting about, whether it's the bases like going down on someone or hand stuff or whatever, anything relating to the sexual spectrum of things that you can do, I think need to have a consent aspect involved with them. For me, I think knowing that consent is kind of fluid, it's not like this set thing. So if you're in a relationship and you've consented once to wanting to have sex or wanting to do something, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to consent every single time. And I think that's the most important part of consent, is that it's not always a solid thing. It can change and evolve depending on how you're feeling, depending on how your partner's feeling, that kind of stuff. I think the biggest thing to remember when we talk about consent is communication. Any relationship is going to fail without communication, so whether you're in a relationship or you're just meeting someone, going out, or anything like that, I think it's very, very important that you communicate how you're feeling. If you're not into it, then you communicate that, and you make sure that the other person is very understanding and knows. For my situation, I'm in a relationship right now, but that doesn't mean that every time, you know, he wants to have sex, that I want to have sex, and that's totally okay. But what you can't do as the person who doesn't want to is sacrifice your wants and needs for your partner's. I think people tend to do that a lot, and it's not necessarily their partner's fault that consent doesn't happen, but because one person thinks, oh, they really want to do this, and I don't know if I really want to, but I don't want to make them unhappy, so I'm going to sacrifice my own wants for their wants. And I think, again, communication in that kind of situation is key. Like, if you don't want to have sex with your partner, you don't have to. You're not bound by a contract because you're in a relationship, or bound to do anything that you don't want to if you're in a relationship with someone. I feel like that happens a lot, especially with people who are younger or unexperienced, and maybe they're with someone who has more experience with them, and they feel like they get very self-conscious about how they're doing and what they should be doing, and they just sacrifice their own wants and desires to please their partner. Which I'm not saying that you should always, you know, be selfish and take your needs before your partner, but you know, you need to think what you want to do, and if you're not comfortable doing something, or you're not ready at that moment, or you just don't want to, even if you've done it before, then that's totally okay. But you just need to tell your partner that, because I feel like half the time it's not their fault and they don't know. So if you can't get up the courage to tell them that you don't want to do something, you can't blame them for not knowing and not, you know, stopping you or saying no or something like that if it's what they want. Because, you know, that's also partly on you. You have to be the one to say, no, I don't want to do this right now. And it's a totally different story if after you've told them no, they push forward. But if you haven't said anything, how do you expect them to know that you don't want to do it? I mean, we can't read minds, so sometimes we can't even read body language properly. So, you know, the only way for your partner to fully know, yes, I really want to do this, I'm as into this as you, and I'm consenting to this, versus I'm not really feeling it, but I'm going to do it just because you want to do it. There's a whole nother aspect of consent too, where if you're not ready and you don't feel like doing it, then don't do it. Don't feel pressured into doing it. If someone's gonna pressure you into doing something that you don't want to sexually, then they're not worth it. If you're in a relationship, you shouldn't be in a relationship with them if they're going to do that to you. And if you're not in a relationship, then you shouldn't be trying to get in a relationship with them. They should be able to understand and just be willing to wait or work with you on whatever you're having trouble with, and they should be understanding enough to not force you into anything. Now, consent in situations like rape or sexual assault is very, very difficult, because it's obviously being forced on you, and there's not, you know, much that you can do in that kind of situation, especially if the person is physically larger than you or, you know, overpowering. And I'm not just talking about women here. I'm not just talking about women with consent. I'm also talking about men, because it does happen with men as well. If you're a man and you do not want to do something, and your partner, who's a woman or a man, wants to do something, you know, you don't have to. It's the same no matter what gender you are. But in situations like rape and sexual assault, they are more common with women, but they do happen with men as well. So with that kind of situation, I know it's very, very difficult to consent, or have that aspect of consent, because it's forced on you. It's not something that you can necessarily control, and there is no consent in those situations. And I think that for me, the solution for that is talking about consent and making sure young boys know that it's not okay, or young women know that it's not okay to force a sexual act upon someone else who's intoxicated or, you know, doesn't want to do it. That's the thing that gets me about consent in situations of rape and sexual assault, when people are intoxicated. If someone is intoxicated, they cannot properly consent. When you are intoxicated, you cannot form decisions the way you can when you are not intoxicated. Your brain is impaired. In those situations, you know, sometimes you may not want to consent in that situation, but either the person doesn't ask, or, you know, it's kind of wishy-washy, you don't really know, nothing was said, that kind of stuff. If you are a man or woman and you experience something where someone is intoxicated, they cannot consent. You should not be doing anything with them without their consent. It's a very, like, wiggly line between, and I just feel like you shouldn't push that line. So if you're intoxicated, it's very hard for you to consent or knowingly consent and make a decent decision on that. Again, bringing it back to this, being in a relationship does not mean that every time you go or want to have a sexual act with your partner, that's automatically a consent, that you can just do whatever you want with your partner. No, that does not mean that they have consented to always having sex with you, always doing something when you want to. No, it's a time by time thing, no matter if you're in a relationship or not in a relationship with someone, or even if you know them, you know, that doesn't matter. It depends on the situation, it depends on how your partner's feeling, how you're feeling, that all of that comes into play. And I just feel like people don't talk about it enough. Schools don't talk about it enough. I feel like we already don't have a, you know, proper sex education in our schools, and we don't even really touch on the topic of consent in those. The way that our society and media works right now, it almost makes not having consent okay. And I think that just sets us up for instances like rape and sexual assault of all genders. I think that's all I have to say. I'm sorry if this was disorganized or just kind of a rant to you guys, but this is what I've been thinking. Please, please, please comment down below your thoughts. I want this to be a video where we can have a discussion about consent and we can learn from each other and we can talk about it and argue a little bit nicely in the comments. So please, please, please comment down below and talk about consent. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to check out my previous video, it will be on this side of the screen and my previous vlog will be on that side. Give it a like if you liked it and subscribe down below if you haven't already. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day and I will see you in my next video. Bye.